Kicks 105.5 WKXH. Good morning, I'm JJ. It is Wednesday, August 3rd at 7:49 and 61 degrees outside. I'll have your full weather forecast coming up in just a little bit, but right now we are going to talk with Mike Barrett from the Barrett Insurance Agency. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I am well, thank you.
Another nice day.
Yeah, my car is almost fixed.
Almost, yeah.
Still got a few bugs to work out.
So you're still playing horseshoes. It only counts in horseshoes, right?
So what's that game called? Cornhole? That's kind of what I felt like when I left the dealership.
Yeah, I'm sure. So this morning for Good Policies, I'm sure by now, and if you haven't, don't look it up, but the devastation that's occurring in Kentucky right now, southern parts of the state. The enormous amount of rain, the incredible 1,000-year flooding that is happening down there. Got me thinking, it's like, when was the last time we talked about flood insurance and the benefits thereof? So I think it's important to do that, because when you think about it, it was a number of years ago where there was significant flooding elsewhere in the country. I can't remember exactly where that was, but you kept hearing, I think it might have been Texas, but you keep hearing about all these folks who lost everything. So they lost their home, they lost their personal property, they lost their memories. Well, hopefully they'll keep the memories, but you know what I mean? The places where they made their memories. It's a really devastating thing. So do we need flood insurance? Probably the answer to most is, yeah, it wouldn't hurt to have it. So typically, and I always say that the time to get insurance is not because somebody forced you to, right? Because the state of Vermont says you can't drive a car unless you have insurance on the car. So you get insurance, right? You get a home mortgage. The bank says we're not going to give you the money and give you a mortgage unless you have homeowners insurance. So you get a homeowner's policy, right? Well, the same can hold true for flood insurance. So usually the only time people get flood insurance is when they're looking to purchase or refinance a property and find out that they're in what they call a special flood hazard area, which requires, under the guidelines of lending on the federal level, that they have to have flood insurance. So if you're in a special flood hazard area, we're talking about the high-risk zone for flooding. So Zone A, Zone AE, Zone A with any number behind it. These are high risk. I think Zone V is another really bad one. These are all very high-risk flood zones. So if you're refinancing or purchasing a property within those zones, you will definitely have to have flood insurance. And what I find is a lot of people even cancel them once they've paid off the debt, which, it doesn't mean your flood zone's not bad still. It's still very bad. So it's important to think about that when you're looking at a property to purchase, because I guarantee you those folks in Kentucky never thought it would happen to them. And here it is. Here we are now with that just enormous amount of devastation. So, but even somebody who's not in a special flood hazard area really should consider flood insurance in many cases. I mean, we talked before we went on the air. I mean, I always say if my house got flooded, wow, I'm on a hill, like really high up on a hill. So I always think it's not ever going to happen to me. But you know what? I could buy flood insurance if I wanted to. So there's different zones that can give you some preferred ratings. Now, there's two major factors with flood insurance that you need to think about. Are you in a FEMA town? Are you in a National Flood Insurance Program eligible community? You have to be compliant within the program, your town does, in order for you to get flood insurance through the federal government. Towns like St. Johnsbury, Barnet, Lyndonville, they're a part of the National Flood Insurance Program. There's more. I could go through the list, but we only have so much time. But those are the big ones in the area that I can name definitively. There are participants. So what happens if your town does not participate? There's a lot of private insurance companies out there that will take you on for a flood insurance policy if you're not in a participating town. And believe it or not, banks are still finding high flood zone risks in non-participating towns. So there's definitely a need for private flood insurance. So it's about just having a dialogue. Is it right for you based on your circumstance, based on where your home is, based on, we're talking 1,000-year flood here, not 100-year flood, which is normally how we rate the floodplain. 1,000-year flood. It's game-changing in many circumstances. So there's opportunity for you to insure your personal property and, of course, your home for loss due to, and it only covers one type of loss, this policy, and that is flood. So it's something to think about. Flood insurance, if you're in a high-risk area, could be very expensive. If you're in a special flood hazard area, we're talking a significant amount of money. Could be in the thousands of dollars, depending on what zone you're in. Private insurance does offer a nice reprieve. Even in the special flood hazard areas, they may be able to take you on for much less, but it's worth looking at the opportunity as to whether it makes sense to you. If you're in a flood zone X, which is a low-risk zone, but you still feel comfortable having it, you could even get what they call a preferred flood policy, which is only a couple $100s a year instead of thousands. So just have the conversation based on where you're at. There's many communities that could be greatly impacted if we ever had the rains that they're getting in Kentucky right now. So it sounded like something we should bring to air and just give people the opportunity to think about.
So, as you mentioned earlier, your home is high up on a hill.
Yes, and I've actually quoted flood insurance for myself, by the way.
So if you have a home or a business, and say you're a little elevated, and so you're really not concerned about flood insurance, but the area below you gets all flooded out, and the water deteriorates the erosion.
Yeah.
And,
that's the hard part. I know where you're going with this.
Everything goes away, and then next thing you know, your house is sliding down into the water.
Exactly. So that's still going to be considered a flood, because if eventually you're impacted by that water at your property. Now, flood insurance does not cover land, right? So if it washes out your driveway, if it takes out a road or access to your house, sadly that's not going to be covered by a flood insurance policy. But hopefully there'd be FEMA money available to your community to repair that. I know in Waterford we had a situation years ago where Simpson Brook Road, just the culverts went away. I mean, it was just an incredible storm back in, I think it was 2011 maybe. Luckily there's some federal assistance for that, but when it comes to actually protecting your home, there's no other policy that has the peril of flood other than a flood policy. So your homeowner policy won't cover you if you have a flood loss and you have no flood insurance. So
it does bring, I don't know if we got time enough for another topic, but that brings to mind the fires they're having out in California.
Yeah, so the fortunate thing for us is that we're not in an area considered high-risk fire. Those circumstances could certainly change, but right now we're not. So in California and other states that have high-risk forest fires, there's fire rating zones that can impact how much your insurance costs. Fortunately, we haven't seen that here, and your regular homeowner policy, fire is fire, whether it be a forest fire that led to the demise of your property or not. So luckily, we're not in those circumstances at this point, and hopefully it stays that way. So,
right.
Yeah.
I know years ago, it hasn't happened recently. I know the St. J. Lindenville Route 5 corridor used to flood out
all the time.
Every year.
Yeah.
Every year. Hasn't in the last few years, though, that I noticed.
No, we've been pretty fortunate in that regard, but that doesn't mean it's over. It could happen at any time. So certainly
never say never.
Never say. If there's anything in this industry that I've learned, that's the biggest one. Never say never, because it can certainly happen to you. So it's about just leveraging your ability to afford proper protection and having a conversation with your agent. So that's really the key focus this morning.
So if somebody wants to reach out to you and talk about flood insurance or any other kind of insurance.
Sure, just give us a call. So simple, 748-5224. Find us on Portland Street in St. Johnsbury, online, thebarrettagency.com, Google, Facebook, and YouTube. Just look for Barrett Insurance Agency.
Well, thanks, Mike, for showing up and sharing that. I've been watching this flood stuff on the news.
Yeah, I have family. My sister-in-law's in Kentucky, and thankfully she's north of the problem. But it was cause for concern when I first got the headline. So keeping an eye on it.
All right. Well, we'll talk with you again next week.
Sounds great. Be well.
Thank you. It was Mike Barrett from the Barrett Insurance Agency right here in St. Johnsbury on Kicks 105.5. Good morning.